Hi, Janet.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm always excellent too.
You look fabulous. That's great.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah. So tell me about Janet.
Well, what do you want to know?
So,
I, like you, am not 20 something, so we have been genius at many, many things in our decades of life. So, what do you want me to talk about, right?
what do you do right now?
Right now, I am the leadership strategist that families choose when they want to confidently raise the standout adults of tomorrow and not lose their shit in the meantime. I know that's not my normal marketing language, but I'm just talking to you. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how long you been doing that?
That's a great question. Officially or unofficially? Officially, like
Officially.
20 years of teaching, but uh, probably in a formality, like in the last 2, 3 years.
Okay.
Refining the craft, refining the strategies, the toolbox, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so are you making a living at it yet, or you want to make a living at it?
Not making a living at it, but I'm not, I know, you're a business guy. I should never say this, but I would do it. Like, I don't need to make a living at it. I would just like to make a living
Oh,
at it.
yeah. Okay. You know, and
Right.
and and that is a big part of what we do. You know, there's some people who have to make a living at it, and then they're not making any money right now. And so that's one of the things you have to look at as we move forward. You know, what does it take? What's your strategies? How do you implement those strategies?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what if you could look at your life 12 months from now and you say, I'm making a living at it? What kind of living would that be? You're talking about making 50,000, talking about making 200,000.
It's a great question. And like, honestly, so the shift, it's an interesting direction in that I started all of this as a speaker, author speaker. So I wrote the book, wrote a couple, compiled with collaborated with a couple of different uh, authors and really thought that no, know and believe that it's an important message.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
leadership is a posture, not a position. And so, like, we got to get this straight. We got to pull it out of corporate America and make it applicable so that, as Oprah used to say, you get a raise, you get a raise, you like we all get a raise because we are all the freaking CEO,
Yeah.
chief everything officer of our own lives. Like, let's take the power back, stand in that posture and own your life. So it's the talk that I wrote is a fantastic talk. And then you get with all the business coaches like yourself, or maybe you're different. No, you're, I'm sure, different. But it's like, well, what's the call to action? What do you want people to do with that? And it's just like, honestly, I would just be happy if they woke up and said, I'm the CEO of my life, and this is where that starts right now. So kids are going to start doing their own laundry. Husband's going to listen to my voice. Work is going, like, you know what I mean? So that's where it started. And then everybody convinced me that it needed to be something more like coaching, like blah, blah, blah. So I started as a speaker and I still have a kick-ass talk. So 12 months from now, wouldn't it be fabulous to make some money speaking, like paid to speak?
Yep. Yep.
In the meantime, since we all understand that that's a very lofty goal for the majority of speakers who don't start getting paid right out of the gate, then I understand that it's in my best interest to maintain a couple of clients along the way to keep the lights on.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. If I was going to hire you as a speaker, I need to know the three things, right? Because this is one of the things I teach when I teach people how to be speakers and how to get that job as a speaker. How to make that ten or $20,000 keynote. Um, when you're applying, they want to know what their audience is going to take away. Well, that takeaway is threefold. Most people don't explain it. Most coaches don't explain this, but it's threefold. It's what are you giving them today, right now, while you're talking to them for that hour? What are you giving them that will help them change what they're doing today? And what are you giving them to take home so they can go, oh man, I need to work on this? So three things. You got those three things in your head?
What was the first one?
The first thing, what are you giving them right now? So when I'm giving my talk, they're going,
I'm
oh,
gonna I'm gonna give them permission to give themselves a raise and change their minds about the posture that they have in their life. I'm going to unpack LEAD, an acronym that I use in, or one of the acronyms that I use in my training, so that they can actually have a set of tools or guideposts to work from. And then what was number three? Sorry.
what can they do when they get home?
They can deploy immediately, step into the new posture without apology and with confidence because it's already there. They
Okay.
just have to make a couple of shifts.
So when you say, and I love this, you say lofty goal to make money as a speaker. What most speakers don't really understand is the effort it takes to get the speaking jobs. Okay. And that takes every day 5 to 10 phone calls, talking to the people and saying, hey, I think I can be the person, and then narrowing that down to the one or two a month who will say, I need to bring you on board. I've got a podcast out there from probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was Garrison Wynn. And if you want to get back on Know, Like, and Trust and find the Garrison Wynn podcast, he's the guy who's made last year, he made $1.5 million speaking. Okay. And Garrison started 30 years ago, but what he learned to do, he shares in that 30 minutes. I think we went overtime, so 30, 35 minutes. But I think it'd be a phenomenal opportunity for you to really learn, because I think you're right. What you have is what I have, which is a phenomenal thing that says we have to change America, right? And it's true, because we have let people educate our people in a way that they don't know how to raise children anymore. Right? We let them get to that place where they don't get to spank or they don't get to discipline. They just send them in a corner and let them do this, or tell them, boy, you're not supposed to do that, folks.
What are your feelings surrounding how are you feeling right now that mommy scolded you?
Yeah. Yeah. And we got the, ow, that hurt, mom. But
Or
that's,
the look. I had the look.
yeah, but and you're right. It wasn't so much. I don't think I talk about getting spanked or getting whacked, and I don't think I got whacked 3 or 4 times in my whole life by my parents. And it's one of those deals where, like you said, usually it was the look, usually it was the disappointment they gave you. But that's what we lack in America today, which is what you say. We have to teach.
Leadership. For me, it's leadership in the
That's
home.
right. The
It's
leadership
just,
skills that teaches your kids how to be leaders, how to be organized, how to be responsible. And that's what leaders are. So anyway, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say on the podcast today and share it with the people so that we can get that. And I want you to be the expert on training future leaders from the leadership you can train today. And so when we get talked on this, it'll be about 20-minute talk. And I want you I'll interrupt you a lot of times because I'll have thoughts and I'll have stories.
okay.
You just interrupt back and say, I got you, Steve. Let me finish this, right? So you understand what I'm doing? It's a conversation, and I want you to be the person that we go to. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to give about a 5-second blank here so I know when to start when I'm editing, and then we'll go from
I'm
there.
good.
Okay.
Not my first rodeo either, so I'm good.
Hey, I'm Steve Sapato, and you're listening to the Know, Like, and Trust podcast. I already introduced her, but this is Janet Krebs, and I'm telling you, we got a phenomenal conversation going for you today that's going to blow your mind. Hi, Janet. How are you?
How are you today, Steve? Pleasure to be here.
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking. Hey, I'm in Florida. Where are you at, by the way?
Yeah, I'm heading your way soon, but currently I'm in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Oh, I got lots of friends who are, we live in a retirement community down here, and I got lots of friends who are from there. They go back and visit family and stuff. So I'm familiar with Indianapolis from that side.
There you go. You'll come
So,
visit with them the next time.
so Janet is the leadership expert. Now, I'm as a speaker, as a speaking coach, I'm always teaching people You can't just say, hey, I teach leadership, because everybody says I teach leadership, and that's too generic. But Janet has a real niche that she wants to help you in your lives, right, Janet?
Absolutely. And it's not, well, I guess it's a help, but I can change people's minds and give them a raise today. Give them the promotion that they have deserved for a long time today. And I'm not just talking to parents. I'm talking to ministers, I'm talking to coaches, athletic coaches, anybody that has responsibility for someone else. Role models, mentorship is alive and well, and they are leaders. And so today, I'll invite everybody to think about the C suite in corporate America, right? Think about this, Steve, for 1 second. One office, one title, chief executive officer, chief logistics officer, whatever. One person, one office. At home, in our lives, we are the CEO, and E is everything. We are the chief executive officers of our lives. Chief financial, chief logistics, chief nutritional, chief medical. The list goes on and on.
And I'm going to ask everybody listening, do you understand what she's saying there? She's not saying, hey, I can't decide and I got to let my kids decide. My kid gets to do this, or my family gets to do that. We make decisions. Now, I'm not saying you are the only one making decisions, but you have to start teaching people how to be leaders, how to respond as leaders, as future leaders. We got into our military sometime, where the generals are this, and they say we need this to happen. And when I went in the service, they broke down your whole emotion, they broke down your ego, because you needed to follow orders. And when you learn to follow orders, you could still question them down the road, but when you learn to follow orders and then you question them, I'm known as QL man. QL man 49 is my email. It's question and listen. Question what they say, listen to their answer, and question it again. Janet wants to be able to help everybody who's listening groom and become better leaders, and then groom other leaders, whether it's your kids or whether it's your employees, right, Janet? Isn't that what we're doing?
And well, yes. And I believe we already are. We just don't think of ourselves as leaders. And we forget that anybody who is watching us, whether we're standing in line at the grocery store, or you have a family, or you're an educator, or you're an athletic coach, the kids, people are watching all the time. And so we are role models in every step we take, with everything we say, and it matters. And all I'm saying is that when I go out into the world and I remind myself that I am the leader, that means I'm going to smile at the person that takes my money at the grocery store. That means I'm probably going to be polite and let somebody that's struggling on the road get in front of me because they're having a worse day than me. Like, it just isn't that hard, but we compartmentalize our lives. And I'm just saying, let's blur the lines and be leaders in everything that we do. And it changes how we approach and how we walk the world.
Well, it's fantastic when she says that, because there are several things in that. She says, hey, make room for somebody when they want to get in. I've been down this where there's two lanes. It says, hey, the road will narrow up here. And everybody's fighting, and then everybody tries to stop somebody else from passing. It's like, if you use the zipper way up there, a mile up the road, when it really does narrow, then you allow people in. But truckers move over and try and block the lane when it says, there's two lanes here. But they say, you can't get past me. You're not being a leader. You're being a bully. You're being a jerk. And that's important, that you start to understand what she's talking about here, which is your leadership skills are the things that help people look at you. You're the role model. I tell people all the time, public speaking will change your life. And the reason it will change your life is because it gives us confidence. I've stood behind people where you're trying to fight through a crowd and somebody stops and the whole line stops. And you're like, well, what's going on? And I'm behind this person and they're standing there looking at a line crossing the other way. And they just stand there. And I'm like, well, what are you waiting for, right? First of all, you could just squeeze through and bonk into these people, but the magic word is excuse me. I've yet to say excuse me to somebody in any kind of a line where they don't make way for you. We have not been taught to use our words, to use our own power. We're afraid of being the leader. We're afraid of taking responsibility for ourselves and saying, excuse me, I need to cut through here. People always give you room if you're the one who's in control, right?
Well, and in all fairness, Steve, everything you said, I agree with 400%. So, in speaker terms, because you know this as well, and, right? Yes, and it's a pretty pillared speaker strategy. Um, I think we have just gotten used to, because of society and the narrative that's been given us, that leadership is a professional title. And so it's not necessarily our fault when we don't think of ourselves as leaders, because leadership has always been a role in corporate America, a title that is given to somebody that is responsible for a project, a team, a budget, whatever it is. We don't think of ourselves as the leaders of our homes.
And
Like, my
that's,
kids are gone, but
yeah.
I'm still responsible for the vessel in which I live and for the people that come through and for the clients that come and see me. Like, I'm still responsible, not for the children anymore, but for the nutrition, for like, it just doesn't end, and it's everywhere. So we talked about being on the road, talked about being, in a store, just general kindness. You talked about the line. I was thinking the airport.
Oh, yeah.
I'll think of you tomorrow as I'm traveling through some of the busiest airports in the world. Anyway, I just think we just haven't given ourselves permission, nor have we allowed ourselves that mindset shift that leadership is outside of corporate America and in everyday lives.
I think one of the challenges, and I see this and I hear it all the time, and that is people who don't think they're heard, people who think they're not given
Yeah.
credit, people who think they're invisible, people who are not respected well, people, and I always go, well, what have you done to take control of that situation? And they go, what do you mean? And I go, do you speak up? And they go, well, people don't listen to me when I speak up. I've tried that and it's not working. And my answer to that is always, then you're not in control of you, because there are times, and I mean, there are lots of times when you've got to make way and give way and conversations happen. But when you're in office, when you're at corporate America, it's amazing to me how few people stand up for themselves. Are you a great conversationalist? Are you a great speaker? There's so many people who think they're good presenters, good speakers. And what happens with their lives is that they get ignored because they're not very good. So people tend to push them aside. And the people who are in control, the leaders, right, take control of a situation, even if they haven't been given the title of leader, right?
So here we can just give everybody permission right now. Here's a fun takeaway. If if you are whatever job it is that you have, there are usually tools of the trade. And I'm going to share with all of the listeners that we have all been given the God-given gift of a voice, right? That is our primary tool. So if you say, oh, I don't have the tools to be successful, I don't have the tools to have that job, I don't have the tools to get my kids to learn how to do laundry or whatever. If you have a voice, you've got the tool. And so you can choose your words carefully. And if it doesn't land the first time, try and try again. Like that, one of the oldest things. If you've got a voice, you've got the tool to be a leader.
And
So
that's
everybody listening, assuming that you've got ears that go with the voice, you've got the tools.
you have the tool, but learning how to use that tool. That's why I
Yeah.
tell people, I teach people public speaking. Now, people go, I don't want to be a public speaker. but you want to be able to speak in public. And there might be a difference in your mind, but there is no difference. If you will take a public speaking course, if you will learn how to use and control what happens in front of you. Sometimes you do it with your voice, sometimes you do it with your posture, sometimes you do it with just a look. We were just talking about how, when our parents were raising us, they didn't have to beat us. They could give us the look, and you were like, oh man, my mom gave me the look. And so you understand that all of these things come into play. So like we were talking, Janet and I were talking before the podcast started, we were talking about how she can make a living. I teach people how to go out and get jobs so they can make a living being a public speaker. If that's what people want, that's what they need to do. But all people need to learn how to use their voice, use their posture, use their image, use their leadership skills, as Janet can teach you about. Janet, how do they get a hold of you? They want to learn more about your leadership trainings.
So simple. I just use my name because if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, that was Janet Krebs. I saw it in the show notes. If you just go to janetkrebs.com, that's my website. But if you here's a challenge for your listeners, ask at janetkrebs.com is my personal email. And I make sure that I respond to every email that I get personally.
Wait, that was ask at?
Yep, ask at janetkrebs.com.
Oh, ask. It's ask and the at symbol.
Correct. Ask
I'm
at.
I'm like the typical reader writing down at, and then the AT. I'm like, what? I don't get the oh.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
so I want you to understand Janet Krebs. Krebs spelled Krebs. Janet spelled just like it should be. No special thing. Janet. So Janet Krebs. janetkrebs.com. And if you want to talk to her, write her an email at ask@janetkrebs.com. And it's important that you guys reach out right now. Stop listening to the podcast. I want you to click the button that says, hey, you want to subscribe before you go. But stop listening to the podcast and write an email to Janet saying, tell me more about how my home life can need your help. Tell me more about how my office life needs your help. Tell me what you can do for me, right, Janet?
Absolutely.
So what do you offer when you say, hey, I want people to give me a call? Should they be parents? Should they be parents with kids at home? Who are you looking for?
I find that if we're talking about leadership in the home, parents of teens and tweens are the ones that are the most noticeable because they wake up one day and they're like, my child was lovely yesterday and I don't recognize them today. That's just the way it goes, right? So they're like, what happened? Like, I need help. I don't know this child. And interestingly, you and I share this passion, which is choosing words carefully. And so people that just struggle with communications and standing up for themselves within their personal lives. And so if I were to look at my client roster history, that would be primarily women who just are looking to reposture themselves in their own lives.
It's really,
I'm not exclusive to women
yeah.
because I actually I have a really sassy format with men as well. But like I said, if I looked at my client roster, they're primarily women, sprinkling of men in there.
Cool. One of the things we talk about is she talked about vocabulary. Everything you do that can help you get smarter, better, sound more intelligent. So subscribe to a thing called Word of the Day. Mine might be Word of the Day. There might be 10 others out there. Word of the Day. And then just glance at it. If you see a word that piques your curiosity, follow it up and see what it means. I was just looking at one 5 minutes before I joined the podcast. I don't remember the word, but I remember it stood for the arrangement, a centerpiece in the middle of a table. And I had never seen the word before. So I saved it and I sent it to my wife because she's a big deal on centerpieces. But little things like that help you broaden, whether you remember it or not, it makes an impression in your mind. And that's what you want to start changing. You have to change. I always tell people, I'm from the Midwest and a lot of my friends are absolutely happy getting their John boat, going out fishing on the Mississippi River, catching a few catfish, hey, going back, throwing back a few beers, and their life is complete. If that's your life, why are you listening to this podcast? But if what you want is more out of life, then you have to make changes in your life. Talking to Janet reaching out to her to have a conversation, just like we're having today, finding out what takes to change you. So you have to want to change. You have to be willing to change. You have to start changing yourself. And simple thing like word of the day, or what are you listening to? I hope you subscribe to this podcast so that you get all this information from all these great leaders that I'm having on this show so that it starts to change you. Janet, I tell a story that I think I was 29 years old. I owned a small business and I was going out of business. And a friend of mine who'd never stopped in before was having a conversation. And as he was leaving, he said, "You know what, Steve, I think you like this tape." And it was cassette tape in those days. And he handed me a cassette tape. Now I'm expecting Grateful Dead, something like that. And as soon as I took it, it was one of those, it had words on it, words. I went, "Oh no, this is one of those talking tapes, right? Motivational things." He goes, "Yeah." I went, no, take it back. I don't want it. And he goes, "No, I think you should listen to it." I went, "You might as well take it back. I'm not going to listen to it." And he said, "Well, stick it in your car because when you run across somebody who needs an attitude adjustment, you can give it to them." I went, "Okay." And I tossed it in my car window, crawled in my car, driving down the road. And suddenly I went, "Hey, wait a minute. He was giving that tape to me. He thinks I need an attitude adjustment." All right. That was that was a little eye opener right then and there. But then probably 3 weeks down the road, I stuck that tape in because I was bored. And I said, "Well, I'll just listen to it." It started the journey to change my life. And that's what I'm telling you folks who are listening.
Who was it?
The journey. Honestly, I don't remember which.
You don't remember?
No idea. No, because it wasn't important at the time. It was important that they had a message that I should hear that says, "Hey, don't be a jerk," right? And that people ask me that all the time. Who was it? I go, "I don't know, but here's what I'll tell you. 4 years later, I was on stage with Zig Ziglar in Peoria, Illinois, right? Doing some speaking. And I was like, boy, this is awesome. And then you hear somebody like Zig Ziglar talking, you're like, oh my gosh, these guys are phenomenal presenters, phenomenal speakers, motivators, right? They have messages that change people's lives. And that's what we want you to do. Reach out to Janet, janetkrebs.com. So it's ask@janetkrebs.com and say, "Janet, I'm struggling." And so, Janet, tell us other words.
You know what they usually say, Steve? I had no idea that I was even allowed to ask for permission
Oh,
to get help in this arena. I mean,
wow.
think about it. We get coaching for business, we get coaching for personal training, we get coaching for financial management, we get coaching for everything. But God forbid you admit that you need a little bit of help at home, that you've got a child that you don't relate to or you're having a hard time connecting with. You have a child that you don't know how to help set some goals for themselves. Maybe you've got a couple of kids that are so plugged into these darn devices that you can't even have a conversation with them at the dinner table. We can work through all of that. Get your life back. It's okay to ask for help. And you know what else? I don't want to be married to you. I don't want to have a year-long relationship. Let's get this done. Let's get you some tools and get you on your way.
Wow, how cool is that? That if you're
How
sitting here
cool is
listening,
that?
yeah, if you're sitting listening to this and you say, "Man, I'm stuck. Man, I don't know what's going on. My life is okay, but I wish it could be better." That's what we're talking about. We want to help you make your life better. That's our job. That's our goal. That's what we were put here in our lives for. Janet, neither one of us started off as motivational people way back here, right? We worked our way up. And then over the last, who knows, 20 years for some of us, 30 years for some of us, we've decided that we want to help more people. If that's what you need is a little bit of help in your life, ask us. We'll be glad to help you, right, Janet?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the keys that we have when we're talking about you changing your life is you have to be willing to ask. You have to ask because we can't reach out to all of you people and say, "Hey, do you need help?" So we rely on you listening to this podcast. We rely on you then taking action from this podcast. Drop me an email, steve@stevesapato.com, and say, "Steve, I'm afraid to ask Janet because I'm not sure. She's the professional and I know you're just a speaker." People do that. And I go, "Okay, I'll put you back in touch with Janet because it sounds like that's what you really want." And that's the key to this is we want you to want the help that will change your life. And more importantly, change your children's life, change the people around you's life. When I teach management skills, I teach general managers and lots of corporations, and they end up changing the lives of their employees because they, like you say, they give them permission to be this person. They give them permission to be heard, to be recognized. It's vital that you start standing up for yourself. And Janet, any last words of wisdom as we start to wrap this up?
Yes, except I'm going to open a Pandora's box, but that's okay because it'll get people thinking. You just said when you're talking with management, right? It's the same. Here's my invitation for people. You and I are actually, we're like, you and I are two peas in a pod because what you're teaching in corporations, I'm teaching at home. Because guess what we don't acknowledge? Guess what we don't respect enough? The transferability of those skills.
Oh, yeah.
They're not any different. We call them soft skills. And you know what? That is the dumbest name for the most important, the most imperative human skills around. But they are transferable in everything that we do. So that's the thought that I will leave your listeners with.
And I'll put this, I remember several years ago, many years ago, I was doing some marketing stuff and marketing training, and it talked about the way the people put the headlines out. And so the headline for this might be "Stop Your Kid from Whining Right Now," right? And that's learning how to be the person who's in control of your home, not letting them dictate, not letting them call you names. We watch TV shows now, Janet, where my wife and I sit there and the kids talk back or call the parents names or throw things. And the parents are like, "Stop doing that." And you're like, "No, that's not how that's supposed to work. That's not leadership saying don't do that." Right? You've seen the rioting on TV. You've seen the stuff that's happening in all the
Yeah.
major cities is because the parents are not in charge of their children. And they're still your children until they move away from home. If they still live in your home, you should be in charge of them. Anyway, that's what we wanted to help with you today. Janet, this has been fabulous. I really appreciate you coming on the
Thank you
show.
so very much. My
We probably
pleasure.
got so much more we could talk about, but we're out of time. So, folks, write to her. Janet, how do they get in touch with you?
Ask at janetkrebs.com.
Cool. Janet, stay on just after I close this off and we'll have a quick conversation. Folks, write to me, Steve at stevesapato.com. And please subscribe to the Know, Like, and Trust podcast so you don't miss any of this important stuff ever again. God bless.
Bye for now.